Hey there, we are back with coffee on the porch with my dog Olaf, and I wanted to talk about fear today because it is a very prominent player. If you are getting into the details and getting into the logistics and the actual doing of a career change, of accomplishing a goal, of accomplishing a career that you've had. The boats are going in the water. And I want to talk about some things that it means and some things that it does not mean. And it's really important to listen through to the end so that you get the full story, because fear is a useful tool for us. It also stops us from doing things that are perfectly safe. And it's coming to mind because I'm currently in the middle of the logistics of leaving today or tomorrow to do something I've wanted to do for a long time, but it's definitely on my edge. So I think it's apt to talk about today. Maybe for both of us, maybe for you and for me. So the good part of fear is that it keeps us safe. One of its jobs is to keep us alive and breathing. As humans, it's really important that our heart keeps beating and our lungs keep breathing so that we can go on to live another day. And a lot of our natural system internally, our physical biological system, is programmed to keep us alive. And it's why fear is such a great motivator. You see it all over the place. You see it in sales, you see it in politics, you see it in parenting. Fear is a motivator because we're naturally hardwired for it. They call it the negativity bias. We're always looking for threats. And there is part of our system that is doing that, but it's not the entire system. So I want you to consider, if you really struggle with fear, which everybody does from time to time, there is an area in everybody's life that makes them afraid. So don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel like you are definitely unique. You're just not unique in this particular area. So that part of you that is trying to keep you safe, I want you to see if you can start reframing and renegotiating your relationship with fear into something that is good, something that is trying to keep you safe and alive. What fear isn't good at is leading. It's a terrible leader. They say that that part of our nervous system is an excellent military. They're excellent security officers. They're always looking for threats. They're on the ready. If something starts running down to attack you, your system is going to kick in, and you won't use a mathematical logic and reasoning negotiation tactic. Your fight, flight, freeze system is going to kick in and take over and do its best to keep you alive. And that's why you see people do weird things. Oh, it is really pretty today, and the planes are flying. For those of you that are new, I live in a really small little town in Alaska, right at the airport, because I love planes. So you definitely hear air traffic in my recordings, because if I didn't, I would never be able to record. So I just decided to go with it. So fear is a great military. It's a terrible leader, because it leads based on what will keep you safe and what will keep you perfectly safe. And a lot of times there are things that are scary that are actually safe, but they're unknown. So the first thing to remember is that fear is here to keep you safe. It's sort of like the military. It's doing its job to keep you safe and protected and alive. And the more that you can see it as that and appreciate the fact that it keeps you alive, the less stress it will bring you when it shows up. So the second thing to know about our system and fear is that the brain likes certainty. Not saying that everybody loves the exact same routine for 50 years of their life, but to an extent, the brain likes enough certainty in its experience to feel safe. Again, we're going right back to that safety aspect. So especially if you're upending where you live and how you make money and where your food's going to come from, where your community is going to come from, those things can be really unsettling to that part of the brain that really wants certainty, because uncertainty feels unsafe, whether it is or not. In reality, it feels unsafe, and usually, in my experience, it's the amount of uncertainty that you're dealing with that induces the fear. A little bit of uncertainty, like will the store have grape juice? That doesn't really set off all of my alarms. Will the store have food ever? That does, for sure. That makes me uneasy, and I think it makes most people uneasy because it's our food system. So when you start feeling those feelings of fear, the more that you can look around and actually say out loud things that are the same, things that are certain. I am certain the sun will rise. I am certain there's enough air. I am certain that I can figure my way out of this. Things like that. I am certain that humans will never all get along all the time, ever, in my lifetime. I am certain that the sky in the daytime will be blue. Somewhere above the clouds, it's blue. I'm certain that there will be good weather and bad weather for the rest of my life. And it seems silly and a little Pollyanna, but creating a feeling and a sense of what is safe and what isn't changing. And actually, Kathy Kolbe is the one that taught me that, because I personally like a lot of change and I need a lot of change. But people I was working with and partnering with tended more towards the stability side of life. And in her theory, people are hardwired with different risk profiles. And it's really interesting. If you'd like to know more about it, you can go look at my website and look for the Kolbe A. But people have different risk profiles. And I was working with a lot of people who tended to need a lot more certainty and stability. And one of the tricks she taught me was to tell them what wasn't changing. I wish I had known this working in technology, because it's nothing but change all the time, all day, every day. It would have helped people both adopt technology and my staff deal with the amount of change in technology. So she taught me to start to introduce the change, but then take a lot of time talking about what isn't changing. So we're changing this new piece of software, but what's not changing is your schedule. You're not changing your location. You're not changing your job title. We're going to work in parallel with both software systems for a while. What's not changing is our training. Of course, we're going to train you. Things like that. And even as I say stuff like that, I can feel my body relax of like, okay, there's enough things that are the same that I have a stable enough platform to adapt and take this change in. So you really need to create that foundation, just like a foundation in a house, that foundation of stability. So when you're feeling fear around your career change, start thinking about what's not going to change in a good way. Maybe you're not moving. Maybe you're staying in the same industry. Maybe you're staying with the same partner. Maybe you're not going to change your clothes. Maybe you're not going to change the coffee you drink in the morning. It can be very small and trivial. And I really challenge you, if you're like, I can't find anything, really consider the very small things like, the sun will rise the next morning, there's enough air to breathe, things like that. So the first thing is fear is your friend, it's trying to keep you safe. It's a great military, great protector. 2, uncertainty can provoke our fear. So creating a sense of stability and safety in your mind is one of the second tactics. And the third is to realize that fear happens, especially in a big shift like this, in a big career change, when you are on the edge of change. And this is the point where people will often quit, because when you're right at the edge of the change that you want, it gets very uncertain. There's a lot of moving parts. It can feel overwhelming. And this is the point where a lot of people quit. And, and even for myself, again, I like a lot of change, but I can tell you last night when I was tired and hungry, I was thinking of just not doing this trip. Like, what's the point anyway? Like, why am I putting myself through all of this stress? This is ridiculous. Blah, 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 blah. And all of us have ingrained thought patterns around things. And one of mine is just like, why bother? Like, why am I putting myself through all this stress? Why do I do this to myself? And if I get some sleep and I eat and I rest enough, usually I wake up the next morning and I'm like, because it's fun, because it's a cool adventure, because it stretches me, it makes me grow, it makes me more confident. I just want to. So I love the sounds. These are little tiny planes. There's always plane commentary. These are little tiny planes. So these aren't big jets. Although sometimes we have some military come up and practice, and it's wild how big and different the military big old airplanes are from our little teeny tiny mosquito airplanes. So when you're right on that edge and you're feeling like you want to quit, first, make sure you're not tired, sleepy, hungry, any of those things. I think HALT is the hungry. You can look up the acronym, and you get my point of making sure you're just not tired or hungry, that your basic biological needs are met. In the course that I built, there's a whole week on the decision framework of when not to decide things, because it's really, really important to build your own internal filter. So what you're hearing in the background there are a couple of ravens. Their babies just hatched, and they are chatty. They've been chatty for days. I thought they would be quiet this morning, but no. So back to making sure you're not tired or hungry. So make sure you're in a good place to make the decision of whether to go on or quit. Realize you're right on that edge. You're right on the cusp. You're right before the peak on the mountain. And so it is when things are hardest. And in general, I encourage people, if they've gone this far, to not give up, to see it through and then make a decision. It depends on your circumstance. This is generalized advice. This is not specific advice. It's busy today in the airport. We'll see if this recording makes it out into the world. My goodness. But realizing that you're on the edge, and it is by nature, it's hard because you are shifting a pattern. You are forging brand new neural pathways in your brain. The neurons are reaching out and finding new connections, and it takes a lot of energy. So you need more sleep, you need more food, you need more rest, all of those things. But it is hard work mentally and emotionally, and sometimes physically. Sometimes you'll feel physically exhausted. And what I really encourage people to do is when you're feeling that way, take a rest, but don't quit. You might need to take a nap. You might need to take a couple of days off and then hit it again when you have more energy. Last night, I was definitely like, I'm not doing that. Why do I do this to myself? This morning, I'm like, this is going to be fabulous. I'm so excited. And all it took was dinner and a good night's sleep. And the third is to realize that as you face this fear, you are rewiring how your whole body and system and brain navigate you through change. So as best you can, talk very kindly to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Actually finishing your dream, actually pushing through the fear. And sometimes that means getting more support. Sometimes that means talking to people. Sometimes it means breaking it down into smaller steps or doing it more slowly or just jumping in and winging it. It looks a little different for every person. But the more that you can achieve the things that you set out to achieve, you teach your system that that is normal for you. And you start rewriting all those stories of, I'm just a dreamer, or I never get what I want, or other people can have what they want, and I can't have what I want, or I don't know how to do it, and all the negative stories that we tell ourselves. The last takeaway is that this feeling of fear right at the edge is not a sign to stop. It is not a sign from the universe for you to stop. This feeling of discomfort is one that you likely need to tolerate and learn to work through. It's not a sign from God. It's not a sign from any spiritual being. It's not a sign from the universe or anything else for you to stop. It doesn't mean anything except that you are right on the edge of success and you need to keep going. So I hope that's encouraging. I want you to keep at it so that you see the product of your dreams in your real life. All right, I hope that helps.